Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the Just Your Average Fishers live stream show on Facebook, coming at you from a very national presence. Welcome to everyone, new and old, who are fantastic followers of the Just Your Average Fishers fishing page for another live show, and this one, without exception, is going to be one of the most technically interesting shows that we have ever put together to date. Before I get into introducing our special guests and some of the topics that we're going to be covering this evening, which is very, very exciting. First of all, with compliments to the supporters of the show, very much Ben, our producer from We Are Technical, helping businesses connect via virtual conference. You need more of it. If you're in a business that needs to connect with your customers virtually, by all means give We Are Technical a buzz and he'll help you out. I would also like to thank some of the prize providers this evening, and certainly Pete from Pakula Lures, special guest this evening. I'll go through his bio in just a moment, has put up an absolute fantastic new technology lure pack with the red bait fish printed skirted lures for Marlin and both southern bluefin tuna. A teaser, we've also got some lures from Steve Lewis from SFT Lures. We've also got a RipCharts membership. Thank you very much to, of course, our special guest, Chris Fullilove from RipCharts. And we've also got a fantastic daisy chain lure, which is also from Pakula, that Ian Loft from Complete Angler Ringwood designed with Pete Pakula, and have been absolutely dangerous on the smaller school fish this year round. So without further ado, I'm going to jump in and introduce our guests, because this show is going to be absolutely information packed. We're going to need all the time that we have to discuss all the topics of setting a spread, finding out where the fish are and helping you go and catch those game fish. And the reason is, it's not cheap. The gear's not cheap, and burning the fuel to go out game fishing, to go out for a duck, is very frustrating. Often if you're in Melbourne, it means a decent old stretch of a hike down to Portland, Port Fairy, or even beyond, up the east coast of Bermagui, Malakuta. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first guest. Now, before we actually speak to him, I look down, not because I look down upon he, but I have this amazing bio in front of me, which speaks to the experience and the level of our first guest. So let me just talk through a couple of these achievements. Over 100 tournament podium finishes, including multiple occasions on the very prestigious Hawaiian International Billfish Tournament and Port Stephens Interclub Fishing Challenges. Pakula Lures have won tournaments all over the globe in multiple places. It has achieved the 2019 International Game Fishing Association's Gil Keach Heavy Tackle Award for Innovation and Education, 2018 Hall of Fame and Lure and Fly Expo. Hooked Up magazine, the Pakula Lumo Sprocket, which is an amazing tuna lure, is unanimously voted as the best squirted lure of all time. Marlin magazine, Pakula Lumo Sprocket in the top 10 Marlin lures each time that the list has ever been done. Again, the same magazine, the Pakula Bullet Jet in the top 10 jets. Same again, top 10 teasers with the Pakula Wombat. It's just absolutely unbelievable. Peter has pioneered so many different products and features into his lures. We're talking Lumo, UV, UV2, MT and CAT additives. And invented many, many crazy items like the sprocket, cockroach, the beer barrel, the rat, the witch doctor, the shackle rig, swivel rig, and many, many more. And his educational pursuits have been wide and far, with his special game fishing book called Unlocking the Secrets, followed up by the world's first interactive CD, Between the Lines. Peter, I'm absolutely in awe of your achievements, and I'd just very much like to welcome you to the Just Your Average Fisho show. I'm honoured, and thank you for sharing some time with us this evening.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Justin. I've been doing it a long time, so the accolades don't come that often.
Oh, look, there's a lot of people that try to bring each other down in this fishing industry, Pete, and you're obviously fair-weathered from a lot of fine fishing days, and still to be looking well and producing and innovating new products. Congratulations to you. And obviously tonight we're going to be talking about some of those new products and how to use them, more importantly, because we do have a lot of average fishers here. Some have been very successful at getting big barrels, and particularly big tuna, and also marlin, but many haven't. So we really look forward to broaching some of those subjects with you shortly.
Luckily, it's really easy.
Okay, fantastic. All right, now I'll go into our next guest now. I'd like to introduce from all the way from Texas, US of A, Chris Fullilove, who is a technical genius extraordinaire, a man of the weather charts, and who can put people onto the game fish through his fantastic app called RipCharts. It's been around for a while, and many Australian billfish fishers, Marlin fishers, tuna, all the likes, will have this program and use it to their absolute heart's content to get on the fish. Chris, welcome to the show.
Good evening. Thanks for having me here tonight, Justin.
No worries. Now, Chris, we're going to come back to you a little bit later on in the show, but we're actually going to be doing some demos of some of the charts around the lower ends of Australia, certainly our areas, and down in Victoria, talking about how RipCharts can really help people. Just before we cut back over to Pete, perhaps I can just hit you with a couple of quick-fire questions. Why did you come up with RipCharts, and what was the real drive behind that?
Here in Texas, in order to run after a pelagic fish such as Marlin or tuna, you're running 70 nautical miles just to get to the edge of the continental shelf. You're running 100, 110 to truly go after a pelagic fish such as a tuna or Marlin. So those are overnight trips. Those are big trips. It's a big commitment. You have to have accurate data to commit to something like that. If you run that far and you've got cold green water or not the right conditions, it's a bust. So we had to leverage knowledge and information and technology, mobile apps, data sets, in order to pursue this sport.
Yeah, fantastic. And obviously RipCharts has been around for a little while now. How has RipCharts evolved, and how does it really help the fisho in getting on the fish once they know RipCharts in and out?
Yeah, so RipCharts is constantly evolving. I mean, from the early days of just being a website service with a handful of data sets to now we process terabytes of data every month for users, as well as we continually develop the mobile app. So I'm proud to say we've got a team that is evolving with technology and with data sets. And I think that's what kind of keeps us on the leading edge, is always bringing something new into the fold. Yeah,
absolutely. I can say it's certainly, I'm no genius when it comes to bill fishing by any means, and this show means a lot to me for an education on my own, and understanding RipCharts better will be absolutely fantastic. So we'll ship over to the starting edge with Pete for a moment. So hang fire there, Chris, and really thank you very much for coming on board. So all right, Pete, we're going to get you kicked off now. Something I've had the pleasure of working with a close friend of yours, Ian Loft, for a little while in Complete Angler Ringwood, helping his business out for a bit, and that store sells an unbelievable amount of Bakula lures, and we're very lucky to do the Victorian release of the new 3D heads with the printed fish skirts. It's such a change, and funny thing was that of course a lot of people came in and just bought them out straight away. We got multiple orders in, but a couple of people said, hey, it's designed to catch the fisherman. Now, I think at the end of the day, Pete, we had a bit of a sparring match with a few people online, because I think that comment sort of detracts a little bit from the effort and the technology that you're putting into it and your thinking. So perhaps you could talk us through the new fish printed skirts and the 3D heads and just lures in general, how they've evolved in Bakula land, and why you went that way.
Yeah, look, it's really just not that complicated. Putting the fish print on the skirts it's been obvious for 30 years, ever since they put a fish print on a Rapala lure, on a popper, on a spinner, made insect prints on insect lures for trout. This is nothing new. But what did come up, and I happened to just chance on it because I used to be in the rag trade and was talking to an old mate, and he sort of said, "Oh, you're in the fishing thing." And I said, "Yeah, you're making skirts." And I said, "What are you doing now?" I said, "Oh, I'm working for a printing factory." And I said, "Really?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "High tech?" And he said, "Yep." So I said, "Can you do this?" And he went, "Yep." I said, "Well, let's do it." So, basically very much like RipCharts, you know, technology changes and it simply hasn't been possible to put a fish print on the skirt before. You know, and look, it's just dead simple. You know, let's have a look at this. You know, it's just a fish print on a skirt. It's the same as hard-bodied Lewis poppers and that have been around for 20 or 30 years that have been doing it. And, you know, that's the fish prints. And, for example, you mentioned the Lumo sprockets and stuff. Well, here's Lumo. So you tell me which one's the gimmick. All right. So here's the Lumo. And Lumo, to me, doesn't represent a damn thing. But to most people, they sort of say, oh, it's a slimy, for example, don't they? Or dolphin fish or something. Now, you tell me, looking at that, which one really looks more like a slimy? It's a dead set no-brainer, isn't it?
100%.
You know, and it's an expensive thing. So we got a couple of samples made. I took them to Arataki when I could go there. That's a bit of a screw up because I left all my fishing tackle there because I was supposed to be going back in 2 months' time. So not only am I stuck in Australia during COVID, I actually can't go fishing because I haven't got any gear. So, but they were very successful there. They were used for the first time on the Gold Coast last weekend by Peter Mathers, who had a yellowfin spread for Marlin and got his first shot in 10 minutes and caught a striped marlin first day and had another shot as well. So, you know, the things work. There's already a couple of bluefin on social media with them. So, you know, they absolutely do work. Now, catching fishermen. All right, well, let's have a quick talk about that. Let's just go back to this. The lures I'm telling everyone to use are the 3D heads. Okay? Which are these? Dead simple, plain white. All right? It's a hard ask. Highly technical because it's got Venturi jets. Venturi jets, they're bigger at the front. Can you see this quite clearly? Is that up? Okay. Quite large in the front, small in the bottom, and it actually creates a pressure wave which puts out a vibration signal, which I believe attracts fish. But more than that, it keeps the lure stable so that the fish print is visible properly all the time. We've also air keeled this. So it's actually got air in the head at the top, a lot more air than in the bottom. So it stays buoyant. This thing doesn't weigh anything. It only weighs about 20 grams, if that. But the design actually makes it truck in the water more violently than the other lures. And it's a hard sell because it doesn't weigh anything. People are used to lead and they're used to the tourist trinkets, which I do say are made for fishermen, which is this one. And it looks absolutely stunning, doesn't it? That's a good looking lure. That's a good looking head. Got a nice pretty logo in it, nice pearl stuff, nice bright orange stuff. This is truly designed to sell to fishermen. It works incredibly well. It's got all that technology, it's got all the additives and all that sort of stuff. But this, to me, has always been the tourist trinket. Okay, it's flashy. What difference does it make? What difference does it make in a lure head that's a pusher that's got a bubble stream around the head for the whole time it's working? Okay, we've got a little bit of silver flash there, but that's not where the hook is. The hook is down the back of the lure. So we've moved the target area further back in the lure so that the fish doesn't grab the head, which it can hang on to very securely, very, very securely. And it's very hard to push that sort of head through a fish's mouth. And when you have a look at a fish's mouth, it's quite amazing. You know, it's solid bone with teeth. And even Marlon got this sandpaper jaw. Even if you put a skirt in a marlin's jaw, close it, try and pull the skirt out, you can't. You've got to wait till the mouth opens. So if it's grabbed around the head as the target, it's got less chance of actually getting the hook because it's not closing that far. If the marlin's grabbing the skirt, then the hook's really standing out and it's got a really good chance of getting hooked. So the hook up rate, I believe, is much better with the plain white heads. Historically, once again, you know, the fish prints have been on lures for 50 years. Going back before lures were tourist trinkets and being made to sell to fishermen, nearly all the lure heads, if you look at the vintage trolling lure pages, were pure white pearl. For about the first 15 years. Then the tourists started coming to Hawaii and America and South Africa and they wanted to buy the lures. And they were buying them pretty cheap because they weren't very difficult to make. So they started adding all this beautiful stuff and they do look beautiful. But you're paying for that beauty as well. As it turns out, these 3D printed heads are being sold cheaper than the normal heads. because they're easy to make. They don't cost much. So, the angler gets a much better benefit out of that. Okay. Does that all make sense?
Makes perfect sense. Thanks very much.
If people think it's a gimmick, okay, I'll admit the pearl head is a gimmick. And if you ask Lofty, he keeps saying, I want these. I go, no, you don't. You want the catch fish. It's time you actually told the fisherman to buy things that catch fish rather than the fishermen. Okay.
Yep.
Now, as far as patterns go, very quickly, over the years, the Lumo sprocket's pretty famous. We've had guys putting out all Lumo sprockets in a pattern, 5 of them, but they only got shots pretty much on the long rigger. So that's the position. And everybody I talked about Lumo sprockets, just put on the long rigger. It works. And then in America, Lumo sprocket is pretty famous. It's in the Marlin magazine and all that. But the best-selling lure in America is actually our frigate rat, which is a black lure. And once again, guys troll the full spread, and that gets eaten most of the time on the short corner or the short rigger sometimes. Okay, but that's mainly a short corner lure. So we ended up with a spread of lures that we've been selling for years and years and years, which is basically this, this sort of thing. And it still works. I mean, it's won a hell of a lot of tournaments. Everybody's used to it. Black on the short corner, blue on the long corner, which is that one, purple or brown on the short rigger, blue on the long rigger, and pink on the shotgun. It's just standard, okay? But whenever anybody's been running all of one colour, they get most of their shots in one position. And through the years, we've sort of worked out which that main position is, which is why we've got the recommended patterns. But it made sense that we should have a pattern of lures out there that actually look like a bloody school of baitfish, which a pattern doesn't. It's a bunch of individuals. And a pattern is really a team that works together. So we came up with the concept, okay, well, let's just represent fish, the local bait species, and we've got 7 species of bait fish in that series. And it just works unbelievably well. So what we've got now is the fish print series, which you can see on screen. And we've also got the matching strips for the teasers. So we can actually form a bait school with the trailing weak fish behind the teasers, and it just works incredibly effectively. We've got them in all sizes, basically from very small, as you can see here, right up to very big, which you can see here. Okay, so we've got it covered. The success is there. People are slow to pick on it because they've got the lures that they trust. We've been making lures for nearly 40 years. When somebody comes into the market, they use the lures that are currently available. They have a success, and then they're locked into them pretty much for life. We've got guys who are still using the 1986 range of lures. We've got guys using the 1990 range and 1995. We change ranges about every 5 years. And it's very difficult for them to change. But if the new guys or the guys who have been around long enough to know that I don't bring out something unless it's better than before, they'll be using these lures and they'll be highly successful and they'll get locked onto them. So in 5 years' time, when I'm in my late 70s, they'll be using those, but they won't be getting them for long, I guess. I don't know how long I can stay in this business, but it's been good so far.
Fair enough.
All right. Does that make sense so far?
No, absolutely. So what the simple intent is creating your own pattern of bait fish that's more realistic around the boat, thus hopefully inviting more consistent strikes, more strikes fundamentally.
Yeah, absolutely. And easy to use, because we were talking about boats with outriggers and boats with and without outriggers. Now, to game fish successfully, you really need a boat with outriggers for many reasons. It keeps the leader out of the water. It widens the spread of the lures, so you can turn on a running school of fish that are actually balling up tight. You can turn a lot faster if you've got outriggers because your lures don't cross. Okay, so that's the main reasons. Plus, you've got the angle of the line, which assists the lure to breathe properly and work properly. The angle of the line is pretty much important, but that's really covered in all my websites. And it just works. The other things that is, we've got these fish prints, and when I do these talks, I like to bring out something that's special that nobody realizes. Now, in Lofty's store, for example, you've been selling a lot of these, which are the crystal flash Uzis that are 5 inches long. Okay, it's one of the best-selling small lures we've got. It's deadly on the small tuna, and the big tuna eat it, but the hooks are too small, so you don't really catch them. They just pull the hooks. Okay, but fishermen don't translate that And we've had this other lure in the range for a very long time, which we don't even market because a few people know about it, and it's a really hard sell. But it's so logical. If that smaller lure works so well, and it does, just trying to work out where the camera is, then the bigger lures should work too. Everybody now's got a Brad J. Brad J's been the hot seller for a couple of years. And the silver bullet, and also in other heads, we make them in all the heads, we've got them, is used when the tuna are around and you simply can't get them to bite. Everybody's been in that position. And they keep changing lures, trying to find the right colour. And when I was in Victoria about 15 years ago, we discussed this, and the guy sort of said, oh, what colour am I supposed to use if we can't work out what colour is the bite thing to do? I said, well, use the colour that can't be wrong. And it's a clear crystal. That is not the wrong colour. So it works incredibly well. So apart from the fish species, you know, this should be in your tackle box.
Okay, so while we're talking about, that's good. Thanks, Pete, because I'm just going to throw a couple of questions to you at the moment. So, and I've got a few here, but I'll just go to this with colour. So, John Daphilis, I hope I pronounced that correct, John. Hi, Pete. If I had to buy one lure for barrels at Portland, what would be the #1 Bakula lure? Thank you.
Okay, well, that's where I find it difficult to answer because I do think of lures as patterns.
Yep.
So
let's say you haven't got a fish print spread. Would it be safe to say that
the fish prints, we've been through that? Yep.
We've been through that, but if you haven't got a fish prints spread, or you've got that, but you can't turn them on, would switching to that white that you just had in your hand, and you're absolutely right, a complete angler ring would have smashed those out the door like no tomorrow. I think they imitate smaller, white bait that certainly the school tuna have been feeding on down here in Melbourne. Would you find that to be the best colour as an out-of-the-box colour, when the chips are down?
Only when the chips are down. Like basically you wouldn't run it normally. It's only when you can see the fish bouncing out and they're feeding on something but you just can't get a bite out of them, which happens in every fishery with every species. So, look, it's so difficult to pick one lure, but it would certainly be a rather small Brad J at this stage. It's just blitzing it. The other colour that nobody's using, I don't think I've even bothered trying to tell people about it because it doesn't look anything special. It's called a magnet pink. I might have one lying around here, which is, I might not too. Okay, that's the Brad J. Get one about that size, which is about a 10-inch. And that's just been incredibly successful all the time. Okay, That'll do. He wanted one lure, let's not confuse him. So that's the answer to that question.
Certainly, a lot of our Japanese friends say that if you're topwater stick baiting for tuna, that pink is an absolute essential colour. And this leads me into a question from Chris Scott. Bluefin tuna question. Can tuna see colour like marlin? And does the same proven colour patterns for marlin apply to bluefin in your experience, Pete?
Yes, pretty much. Yes. They don't see what we see. For example, that clear bullet. You see that, don't you? Right?
Yep, we can. Yep.
Right. So I think the fish see that.
Yeah.
All right. Because the UVs and the lumos and stuff have just been way too successful, and the new cat additives have just been way too successful. And the cat additive humans can't see. Okay. And just getting back to the Japanese saying pink, we ran statistics for years and years and years. And although people kept talking about pink, it didn't catch that many fish. It wasn't in the top 5. And it wasn't until we start chucking additives in it that colours like Brad J, Screamer and stuff really started catching fish. It's quite interesting that I've got we used to have pinks in the range all the time. They never sold. It was quite remarkable. There was a combination with pink and brown called Poo Brown done by Jinkai quite a number of years ago, which was absolutely deadly. But there weren't many colours on the market at that stage, but that was an absolute killer. But since then, pink really didn't appear in the statistics all that great. Okay.
Now, let's just talk for the beginners for a moment, Pete, that, and you've mentioned, look, in your opinion, game riggers are essential because it gets the right angle on the leaders, gets the lures working properly. Can we talk through maybe, and I know I've seen you have pictures of this in the past, let's talk about setting a spread, because a lot of people come in and they'll buy a mixed bunch of lures They might have some different weighted gear rods, 15 or 24. Some people come in and lash out and just go for 37 straight away. And they go, right, I'm heading down to Portland. It's tuna season. The social media is lit up on fire saying that the bluefin are on. How do I set a spread? So someone's out there in their boat. They know roughly to troll at whatever speed. How do they set a spread?
Okay, when you're a beginner, you are a beginner. I'm supposed to be famous now and all that sort of stuff. I lost my first 18 Marlin before I got one, because I basically came out of sports fishing with light line, and then we started targeting quite large Marlin, once again on the light line, like 6 and 8 kilo, targeting 80 kilo blacks and stripes and stuff, or 60 kilos, whatever they were. So we weren't catching them. So my honest advice with beginners is start off with the school fish, get used to hooking a fish, clearing the deck, and basically dealing with a fish next to the boat. Trying to start off game fishing with, the first times you're going and handling a 100 kilo bluefin by the side of the boat. It's a really big ask. Certainly you can get out on some of the charter boats in Portland, who'll run you through a bit. You'll see how the whole system works, and then you can sort of start bigger. But, I'd be starting with like 24 kilo line or 15 kilo line with the small lures that Lofty's been selling in those little daisy chains and stuff. What's he call them? The short shots?
Pack shots, I think we're calling them, yeah.
Okay. Well, they're basically a bird and basically a bunch of little lures running down to a larger lure at the bottom with a hook in it. And they're almost impossible to fish wrong. You can't run these wrong. You don't need outriggers. You don't, you can put them anywhere, and because they're so long, they work. So that'd be a really good starting point, is just get 5 of those or 4 of those, how many ever rods you want to troll, and get used to running teasers. A lot of people, talking about teasers, like you can see a whole bunch of them behind me, spreader bars, dredges, daisy chains and stuff. They sort of say, oh, they're too hard to deal with, when you hook a fish. And I go, well, the problem is you're not hooking fish. So at least it's a starting point where you're going to hook more fish using teasers. And it's good to see spreader bars finally being used in Victoria for the last 3 or 4 years, even though Fred Archer was talking about them 40 years ago. And so they've been around a long time. They're certainly part of the US tuna scene and marlin scene. In fact, some of the boats troll up to 11 teasers and 11 lures. So, they're really going for it, but they're after $1 million tournaments. But you're trying to catch your fish. So start off with smaller lures and progress then to the bigger lures. For tuna, you really don't need lures any bigger than that, which is 11 inch or 10 inch. You really don't need to go any bigger than that. They're not that expensive. $500 will see you right with a full pattern of lures rigged. But start off with the daisy chains, because they simply attract a lot more fish, and they're teasers with hooks on them, so you don't have to run separate teasers.
Okay. Now, how do we set that spread? So Chris has just thrown in a question saying, how do you decide where each skirt or which each head type is placed? Because obviously we talk about positions, shotgun, long rigger, short rigger. Do you also want to talk about the appropriateness of running certain head patterns in particular positions?
Okay. Yeah, I'll start off with basically saying, first of all, in Australia, I think there's about 500 lure makers. Pick one and just troll their spread that they recommend in the positions that they tell you to run them in. I sort of see these guys running 5 different brands in 5 different lures. No 2 lure makers make lures to run at the same speed in the same conditions. There's none of that communication. I don't speak to other lure makers and say, I'm making a range to go 6.5 knots in 20 knots of wind. What are you doing? There is not that communication. So pick one brand, whatever it is. We certainly hope it's Pakula, but just pick one brand. Get 5 lures. You don't need 20 lures. You don't need 50 lures. Get 5 lures from maybe one brand, get 5 lures from another one, and sort of swap them around during the day, but only troll one brand at a time. With the Pakula lures, it's pretty straightforward. The shorter the head, the shorter the position. This is pretty much how we've designed it. And I'll go, I don't know which camera to use on this. We'll go to that one, I think. Okay, this is the short head, as you can see, and it's a sharp edge. All right, and we also make this in a round head, which I actually don't have with me. Oh, I've got the smaller pattern here. I've got a bigger one. Okay. closer to the boat if you're going to run mixed sizes. The biggest lures always go closer to the boat, smaller lures out to the back. So you can see we've got 2 large lures here. That lure is a short one, so it's the shortest position. Okay. It's also quite sharp. If it doesn't hold in there, they get a short lure with a rounder head. We call them pacemakers and stuff. I don't have one on the table. The next position is further back, and it's at a lower angle. The line's going at a lower angle to the surface, so we need the lure to be a bit longer. Okay, so it actually stays in the surface and doesn't get pulled out and stays around the surface. So we use a longer head. So you can see that one's longer, and the face is just a little bit narrower. Okay, then going further back, if you've got an outrigger, then the angle steepens again, so we need the shorter heads again, which is that head. Then going further back with the long rigger, once again, it's about the same angle as the long corner, so that's a longer head. In the shotgun, it's the furthest position back, so it's by far the longest head. Now, if you don't have outriggers, you don't have outrigger positions. I actually call them football positions. Okay, and the football positions I call them is, we'll just run through it again, put that there. So we've got still got the short corner, still got the long corner, then we've got the short winger, right? Because you don't have a long position, we've got a short winger. It's not an outrigger, so we run another long lure, which is that one. Then for the long winger, we then run a longer lure, and then on the shotgun, a longer lure as well. So the patterns are quite different if you've got outriggers with the different angles of line, or a boat without outriggers.
Okay. Now, what's the
in
sort
these
of
packs?
distance?
In these packs, it's actually got them listed with the positions.
Okay. And what sort of distance apart are you setting them? Is there a rule of equation, Pete, with the distance that you set each lure apart back from each other in those long and short positions?
Yep. When you're trolling along, let's call it 6.5 knots. 6.5 knots, I believe, is a pretty good trolling speed. It's pretty comfortable. On a calm day, your coffee won't spill, your beer can won't fall over. It's nice and comfortable. Once you go faster, the pressure on the lures and the rigs actually destabilizes them. And also the guys in Victoria also run some deep divers, and they don't realize that the faster you go, the less action your lure's got. The most action is actually at around 3 or 4 knots, but they still work pretty good at 6.5. At 12 knots, they're a stick. There's almost no action in them at all. So when you're setting a spread, you're doing about 6.5 knots regardless of the size of the boat. You've got pressure waves behind it, and the pressure waves are actually the distance of your waterline apart. So if you're in a boat with a 20-foot waterline, your pressure waves are 20 foot apart, and you basically put your first lure on the second wave, second lure on the third wave, fourth lure on the fourth wave, fifth lure on, and so on until you get to the fifth lure, which is the shotgun. And by then your lures should be evenly spaced. You should only have about 5 or 6 waves behind the boat where the last lure actually sits at the end of the prop wash. So it's in reasonably clear water. Okay. Also, if you look behind the back of your boat, you'll see that most of it's white water, but you'll have blue holes pretty much in the positions I've spoken about. Even though there's white water everywhere, you'll generally see that this little blue hole develops, and that's actually clear water where you can run your lures in the wash. Okay.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it.
Now,
But you do the longest lure out first.
Okay. Now I'm just reading through a number of questions, so let's get some quick fire answers happening here, Pete, because some of these are quite detailed. So Neil McKenzie, and I believe this is Neil McKenzie from McKenzie Lures, who's one of our newer local lure manufacturers, Pete. So he's obviously inquiring from a legend of yourself. Just wondering, due to their weight and swim action, are bullet heads one of the better choices to run on a daisy chain or teaser, as larger breaking strain leaders can alter lure swimming action?
Look, bullets are good. I personally don't run bullets because I like seeing the explosion on the surface. To me, fishing is very visual. I don't really like subsurface stuff. My whole fishing career, whether it's trout or flats fishing and stuff, it's all visual. I prefer surface lure. Yeah, look, behind a daisy chain, it really doesn't matter. I prefer stuff with Venturi jets in it because it does create the pressure waves, which I believe attracts more fish. And so that's my thing. Yeah, look, sure, pretty much any lure behind a daisy chain is fine. If you want to run bullets, there's no problem with that at
Okay.
all. However,
Yep.
you do need a bit of drag on the lure, because if you don't have any drag, the bird doesn't work that well. The bird actually needs some pressure behind it to get it really vibrating quite well.
Okay. All right. A couple of ones that are a little bit more Marlin centric now. If you had to pick one lure size for striped Marlin, what would you choose?
Cockroach.
Cockroach, which is about 8 inch, isn't it, or 7 inch? Yep.
Basically, worldwide, people use lures that are way too big for striped marlin. Now, for striped marlin, I've said that, which is already half the size of the people that are using those, which is the most common size. And lots of people actually use sprockets, which are bigger again. Now, I'm telling people to use that, which is a cockroach. The lures I personally use are Uzis.
Okay. For striped Marlin. Fantastic.
Striped marlin, because striped marlin, if it's the bait, they're basically a school fish. They're a pack fish that attack in packs, and they basically attack fish that can ball up, which are generally quite small.
Okay.
And, even when they're with striped tuna, they're generally not eating the striped tuna. They're eating the bait that the striped tuna are eating.
Okay. Mark Fry, is it necessary to increase or decrease your trolling speed for tuna as opposed to marlin?
No, not at all.
Same. Okay.
Okay, just to put that in perspective, both marlin and tuna do something like, say, 25, 30 knots flat chat. The argument whether you're doing 6.5 to 8.5 knots, which is the range we're really talking about, or even 12 knots, is insignificant to them. It makes no difference to them. Simply get your lures working harder by bringing them closer to the boat, or put them back so they're lazier. That's the only difference you have to do. The lures, you can get them to do whatever you want at most speeds.
All right. Paul Richards. G'day, Paul. Hi, guys. We run a spread of 7 rods and 3 teasers behind our boat. Is there any possibility that we're too crowded and potentially blocking fish strikes? Thank you very much.
No. And I was amused by it too. I went to Portugal and fishing for giant blue marlin, which average around 600 to way over 800 pounds in Portugal. They run 11 130s. So no, he's not.
Okay.
And, good on him. I think he's actually doing the right thing by creating, a school of fish. It'd certainly be good in the fish prints. And I guess he's in a trailer boat, which means it doesn't really matter what's out the back, because when you hook a fish, you're not going to back up on it for about half an hour until it settles down. So it doesn't matter what's out the back, as long as you can knit the rods in and around to stop it tangling and cutting off. You're fine. Yeah.
Okay. Kai Chesterfield. G'day, Kai. When chasing marlin, is it better to run a whole bunch of teasers and dredges and have a rod rigged up with a switch bait, or run minimal teasers and more skirts?
Oh, look, I think that's really up to you. I certainly don't see the point of switch baiting, because I don't have any problem hooking the marlin in the first place, and, we can cover that a bit, but that's certainly covered in my website, pakula.com, where we go through, hookup problems and stuff like that. But yeah, whatever floats your boat. If you want to be a bait and switch guy, be a bait and switch guy. If you want to use live bait, I think it's really important. I actually had a guy bag me the other night thought it was a good laugh, Peter Pakula using live bait. I don't see anything wrong with learning different systems and becoming as good as you can at them. Switch baiting, though, is very difficult out of a trailer boat, because you don't have the vision. You really need a tower or a fly bridge to really look down and see what's really happening behind the teasers and stuff. But yeah, if he wants to try, give it a go. Okay, the most important thing with all of this, and it's really good you've got Chris here, is that, we've got the technology to raise the fish, catch the fish, hook the fish. But you really got to go where the fish are when they're there. I sort of noticed on a lot of the forums and stuff, have you got a RipCharts for Bermuda or Portland? And somebody will put it up. I mean, it's a breach of copyright. But the thing is, it's not live. That water's not going to be the same tomorrow. So you really need the information as close as you can get. Basically on social media, nobody's really telling you the marks and stuff. But by using up-to-date stuff and mobile apps, which, Chris will probably talk about, gets you where the fish are, so you can get the experience of either hooking them or missing them, and learning to catch them, and which I think is about the most important thing.
All right, 2 final quick questions, and then we're going to bring Chris into the equation, Pete, and give you a bit of a rest. Paul Borg, I fish a lot on my own, so I run heavy leaders. Do these make much difference on the action of the lures, and should I change what I'm doing?
Yes. He doesn't say what heavy leaders is.
No, Paul. I assume. Let's just assume for a moment it's 250 versus 150 or something like, or maybe 300 versus 150.
Yeah, and also the 400-pound 30-foot wind-on leader using 6-inch lures, which is a no-no. Yep. But look, in general, yes. The lighter the leader, the better. If you're fishing solo, the way around it is use daisy chains, where you can go much heavier in the leader because all the little daisy chains in the bird hides the leader, so you really can use much heavier leader. In general, absolutely. To the point of absurdity, where now at Port Stephens, live baiting for striped marlin guys are going down to 40-pound leaders.
Yep.
Which to me is insane. I don't think you have to go under 100, but certainly the lighter the leader, the shorter the leader, the better your lure works, and the more chance you've got of hooking up. But you've got to, if he's fishing solo and thinks he needs heavier leaders and actually wants to catch them, I think that's that's important to him. To me, get the shot, get the bite is the most important thing, and learn from there. And
that's certainly something that's probably just digressing just for a moment, is a little bit different in your thinking compared to a lot of other people that walk into a retail fishing store, is that just that your comment talking about heavy wind-on leaders. We in Complete Angler Ringwood would probably suggest using on a 15 kilo setup no greater than a 100-pound wind-on leader if someone wants one. But often we just tie straight down to a double because then you've got less connection. But obviously there's this equation between someone's experience of a leader, say a leaderman on a boat who can leader a fish correctly with just say a 15 kilo double tide versus a 100-pound wind-on, which will feel a lot better in the hand. You obviously advocate for not running wind-ons. Could you explain a little bit about that?
I've got a full article on my website with the pros and cons, but basically I think they're dangerous because I don't like being connected to something I can't break or let go of. And certainly for novice anglers who fill up their reels completely, then put a wind-on there, they've got a really good chance of jamming that reel when that fish is close with the wind-on there, and then they're basically connected to something they may not be able to hold, and they get hurt.
Yep.
And I can tell you that from experience. And I actually think that I'm the guy who invented wind-ons, because I actually caught a black marlin, a 96 kilo black marlin, I think it was 96 on 8, had a wind-on leader, which the guys wanted to disqualify at the weigh station. So it created a lot of fuss, and I think that was pretty much the first time it was used. Within 3 weeks after that, I was using the same sort of system. The leader jammed and I broke 4 ribs. So, it was pretty short-lived. But I can see why people use it. I can certainly see, the charter boats using baits and, repetitive stuff where they're going through a hell of a lot of leader and storage area, and fridges use them. But they've got experienced guys. To me, a short leader for tuna, use a double and then just straight down to an 8-foot leader. It's plenty. You can gaff off that. And certainly, you can tag off it. You can do whatever you want with an 8-foot leader. You're not going to catch too many tuna longer than 8 foot.
Yep.
There is nothing on a tuna or a marlin that will cut through a leader.
Yep.
All right.
Last question before we head over to Chris. Nick Davey, how do you store them? This is a really good question, because sometimes skirts, if they're not washed properly and not looked after properly, they can get a bit sticky and so forth. What's your recommendation for storing skirts, Pete?
Very quickly, basically, they must be washed pretty soon after you've used them. They must be dried in the shade, not in the sun, and not in a bag. They should be taken out of the bag unless you've got one of these mesh bags. But even so, I do pull them out and dry them in the shade anyway. You certainly don't want them in solid plastic. If they get sticky, it's not a big deal. Basically, you just put detergent in the water, wash them, and you'll get the stickiness off. What it is, the plastics are solids. They're not soft like skirts. And that stickiness is just the oil migrating out of them. So by just hitting them with detergent, you get rid of that surface oil. There's still plenty more in there. You don't use detergent normally, but only once they get sticky. And then once they dry in the shade once again, and wait a while for them to dry, it could take a while, hit them with some sort of spray, like even Mr. Sheen these days. The silicone sprays aren't as good as they were. CRC 808 is pretty good, a pure silicone. But Mr. Sheen silicone with waxes. Pledge, if you can get the non-scented ones, pretty good. And that will restore your lures, skirts, and you can keep them forever till you lose them.
Fantastic. All right, now, Pete, we're going to give you a bit of a rest. We're going to swap over to Chris from RipCharts. Chris, thank you very much for joining the show, and we've done a little bit of an introduction with you of why you sort of started RipCharts and so forth. Perhaps you could just give us a little bit of a précis to why is RipCharts so important in game fishing, and what does RipCharts offer? Because you can pull data sets from a lot of different places, or individual people can say, over here, jump on the Bureau of Meteorology website and so forth. Could you tell us a little bit, what's the key advantage that people are going to gain out of RipCharts? You'll just need to unmute yourself there, Chris, before you go. Beautiful.
There we go.
You're back.
Yeah, so RipCharts is, continuously focused on the product, continually focused on customer success. It'd be easy to throw up, a basic product and say we're done. It's good. Go use it. Just recently, we've added hourly updates to where we're doing nearly 40 SST updates per day. We've added 4 chlorophyll satellites, and so we're kind of committed to your success, and we're willing to keep throwing resource, time, and whatnot at it to continue to be there. I think we are the leading edge. We continue to create the vision of how to analyze this data and how to make it successful. Not to discredit BOM or any of the governmental services, but they're for the most part a weather service. They're not a fishing service. We're there for the sole purpose of a fisherman.
Okay, fantastic. And I suppose just more to the introduction, just for our viewers at home that may not have used RipCharts or early in their RipChart journey, really, we've just listened to Pete talk about maybe how to set a spread and what lures to pick for Marlin or Tuna, and it's all good to look at where people are catching them on social media, but really what RipCharts is giving the angler is clearly represented information of where they're more likely to find billfish, and that data, quite current, so they're better if they fish those areas. So would I be right in saying that?
Yeah, RipCharts gives you the ability to analyze water. There's water that is going to be productive, and there's water that is not going to be productive. Using RipCharts, we aggregate a lot of different data sets that you have instantaneous access to quickly review and analyze and discern where are my chances better, or do I even have a chance? Perhaps. There's areas that just you would not fish. And I know you got a lot of trailer boats in Australia, and people will run up and down the coast. So you want to be running to the right spot, running to where there's good water.
I think in our discussion the other day, Pete made a very good point that if people came down to Portland and heard off social media that fish were getting caught on the 40-metre line, they would often zigzag along the 40-metre line, and if they'd gone, tuna swim very fast. If they'd left that area, and they have no luck, they'd be like, well, why aren't I catching fish? And Pete sort of made the comment that if you look at RipCharts and you find the most ideal area in terms of surface temp and chlorophyll to go fishing for tuna, still tuna might only be in 20% of that area. So you're still going to have to work a reasonable area. But what RipCharts is giving you is the opportunity to look at that data set and really hone into an area so you're fishing with the greatest chance of getting that 20% of fish, rather than trying to find a needle in a haystack of 100% of area that you're not too sure is the right area.
Yeah, and the thing that, and I'll touch on this later as well, the thing that really helps in analyzing a data set are reports. If you hear, we caught fish in 1,000 fathoms out of such and such port, you can go and look at that water on RipCharts and analyze, there was fish in that water. What is there that's going to help me understand perhaps for the future? And so you're absolutely right. If people are fishing and they're getting reports, well, it'd be nice to understand why and what's occurring there that made that productive. And maybe those fish will be there tomorrow, or maybe they won't. But if you have the knowledge of why there were fish there and why they were successful, you've got more options when you leave the ramp, when you understand what's happening.
Okay, so I'm sort of throwing over to you because you've got a number of slides prepared for us this evening to talk us through RipCharts and what it can offer and how best to use it. So go for your life, because this I'm really intrigued with. I'm sure as many viewers are.
Yeah, so I've kind of put together a couple of slides just to kind of introduce RipCharts and to really jump into some analysis. And we'll try to go pretty slow here and just to explain what the data sets are that RipCharts has and how we would go about adding them. And so just a quick backstory, RipCharts, we've been in business for about 13 years. My business partner and I, we're just kind of friends and family that operate the business, and we're very passionate about it. So we've been in Australia for several years. We've learned your fishery. We've learned how to provide data services and analysis for that fishery. I will say different fisheries will fish differently. I'm obviously fishing the Gulf of Mexico. Sydney and East Coast of Australia will be different than Portland. And so let's kind of keep that in mind. I will say though that the principles are the same, but in some areas, I would say some data sets are more significant in some areas than others. And I'll kind of point out a few of the things we've learned over the years. So as stated, RipCharts is a satellite imagery provider. We aggregate a lot of different data sets and we put them together into a mobile app and website for easy convenience. We provide a lot of data analysis tools and features that helps you analyze data. We have 2 very successful mobile apps that are available in app stores, and I'll give you some demos and screenshots of those here a little bit later. And so kind of the key things I'm going to talk about here are how to analyze the data. And the first one we're going to talk about is altimetry and the chain of life. And then we're going to look at what we call surface structures, similar to a bottom structure, but you've actually got a structure on the surface when you have a temperature break or a chlorophyll break. And then we're going to talk about eddies, currents, and transition of current, which I'll say is a difference between me fishing Gulf of Mexico and you guys fishing the Eastern Australian current. And I'll just note that in the Gulf of Mexico, we seek out current because for the most part, there is not a lot of current. We want to see current, we want to fish current. I know with you guys, you have the strongest current in the world, and therefore you will not run to the fastest part of that current, but instead you're looking for little eddies that will spin off of it. And so that is one thing I've learned from you guys in analyzing your fishery as well. So more on that here in just a minute. So we're about to go big time marine biology here, and this is what we call upwellings and downwellings, which are caused by altimetry, which is the sea surface height. Now, it's not really tides necessarily that change out throughout the day, but as satellites observe the ocean surface, there are going to be areas of depression and areas that are higher in elevation of the sea surface. What that elevation change indicates is when you could have an upwelling or a downwelling. If you look on this, it's kind of a cartoon. You can see on the left, there's an upwelling. And in the southern hemisphere, an upwelling is denoted by a depression in altimetry along with clockwise current. And now what that does is it creates what they call a Coriolis effect. It happens with atmospheric weather patterns. It also happens in the ocean. And when you have a clockwise current associated with an upwelling, it is going to bring nutrient matter to the surface. And with that transport of nutrients, it stimulates a chain of life. RipCharts provides an altimetry chart that shows you these upwellings and downwellings and kind of the optimal zone, although it's not an absolute, but the optimal zone of that is what we call a zero line. If you look kind of in the middle of the chart there, we've got kind of plankton, which feeds bait fish, which will feed then larger pelagic fish. And all this is kind of optimal about the zero line. As that upwelling continues to spin, that chain of life is refreshed with more nutrients, more bait fish, more pelagics. And so the longer it spins, the bigger it is, the more nutrients that are transported, the better bite you're going to have. And I'll point back in time. I think last year, Malakuta had just an epic marlin bite. People were catching 20, 30 marlin in a day. If you went and looked at the altimetry during that period at that time, we actually had two upwellings that collided, and they were fishing massive bait balls and had a great trip. Similar up off of Gold Coast, they had a great tuna season last August. A little bit of an anomaly perhaps, but what had happened was a massive upwelling had moved into the coast, bringing these nutrients and bait fish and pelagics along with it. So I would note is when you're hearing of just really epic bites and just, you know, amazing reports and whatnot, go look at an altimetry chart and look, what does that water look like? Most of your epic bites are going to be associated with a good upwelling that has moved into reach. Now, the other side of an upwelling, looking at the chart here, is what we call a downwelling. And what will happen is you start to get nutrient decay and a diminishing of bait fish, and over time, a diminishing of pelagics. That's because your current will actually be counterclockwise, and it's no longer bringing up nutrients from the bottom. And so you're not refreshing that chain of life. Over time, you're going to have what they call kind of a void of nutrient and bait and a desert in the ocean. These are the types of areas you'd want to avoid is these big downwellings. So this is a side view of what we call altimetry. I'll show you some examples here of what it looks like from a chart. And so you can see here we have a clockwise current, and the core of this blue and purple zone is an upwelling. And now the zero line, it may be hard to see here on the chart, but is in that kind of green area. And things that we want to recognize here is that tighter altimetry lines are better. If you had a really loose circles and lots of space between the lines, I would say that is not as significant or perhaps not as beneficial. But really tight altimetry lines are more preferred. You want to have what we call collected currents. You want to have that current circling around that upwelling. Now, over time, it will start to dissipate and scatter and soften up, and that's just the way that they evolve. But when you have really good tight circles and really good collected currents around it, that's a sign of a good upwelling. The other thing that really helps upwellings is when they're in deep water. You want them kind of big, and you want them to spin. You want them to bring up nutrient-rich water, and then you want them to drift into your shelf. You can get upwellings and downwellings on the shelf. They're not very dramatic or very big. I would say these probably are not as significant as upwellings and downwellings that were in deep water. Jumping over to sea temps real quick. You know, sea temps help us identify life along with altimetry. And what that would be is what we were calling surface structures before. When you have an aggressive change of sea temperature from cold to warm water, that barrier or that transition zone, that aggressive change in temperature will concentrate bait. It'll concentrate life. It'll concentrate your pelagics because they'll be feeding on the bait that is along that zone. And so you'll see here we've identified several temperature breaks between cold water and warm water. Additionally, I've overlaid the currents with the sea temperature. So you can see some currents. The longer arrows are going to be stronger current. The short, stubby arrows will be a little bit more of a slack current. But in a few of these areas, you will see where eddies have spun off from the fast current. And those are areas of importance that you'd want to pay attention to. When you have these eddies that will spin off, it will kind of, it'll leave that bait kind of in place, and you'll have a pelagics feeding on that. And so perhaps in Portland here, when we have a good zone of warm water and you have an eddy that kicks off and perhaps drifts closer into shore, that's going to bring bait and pelagics with it. So that's an item to pay attention to when you're analyzing reports and where your target zones would be.
And certainly, Chris, Stuart Richardson has asked, for Victorian waters like Portland, what signs indicate how much current is running and how do you use it to your advantage of bluefin? I think what you've just covered really answers that quite well. I'd imagine, does RipCharts give you current speed, or you don't think that's essential because of the depiction that the current is harder if the arrow is longer?
So the mobile app does give you the current speed. When you click on a spot or tap on a spot, it will say what the calculated speed is there. The longer and shorter arrows will also kind of give you a quick indication of kind of fast versus slow.
Oh, okay, and just quickly, I'll throw in another one. Mark Fry said, always find it difficult to find offshore eddies. So there's a really good depiction of how to find those, where the arrows are kicking off, that's your eddy there.
Yeah, those little arrows and if you get an arrow that does, or if you get a combination of arrows that do a full circle or a spin or a twist off of a mainline current, those are the areas I would pay attention to.
Fantastic. And Chris Scott said, look, as a total beginner to SST charts, how do you recommend learning to use the charts in RipCharts and what components you're looking for? Chris, that's fundamentally what we're going through right now. So Chris to Chris, listen up. Chris is going to keep on talking.
Yeah, and we cover a lot of the basics and fundamentals on our website and on our mobile app. We've got video tutorials built into it. We get a lot of feedback saying, I just followed the tutorials and I had a great trip. So we do cover the basics. You can kind of watch them at your own speed and rewatch them again. We cover the basics of sea temps, watercolor, and how to use the tools on the mobile app. I will say there's a statement at the bottom of this to use the customized tool. Let me just say, for all RipCharts customers and future customers, this is one of the most powerful tools for analyzing data and finding these zones of temperature change. If you've not used the customized tool, watch the tutorial, because it literally is probably one of the biggest tools that distinguish us and that distinguishes a successful trip. Just continuing on here with some more sea temp examples. We've got a good plume of warm water. This was from maybe about a week ago off of Eden. And you can see, and I've zoomed it in here, we have a lot of good criteria in this little shot alone. I've zoomed it in, but there is the zero line looping up through this water. So you've got a good upwelling zone there. You've got clockwise current. You've got that sea temp break, the SST break, pushing in over the shelf, and you've got some variations in current. I wouldn't say you've got a full eddy in there, but you do have a transition of kind of fast current to slow current. And so just in an attempt to do an analysis, you've got a lot of good things here. And that's kind of the typical rule when analyzing data, is look for overlapping factors. You want your current to be right. You want your watercolor or your temp to be right. You want some bottom structure. The more of these attributes you can kind of put together into a zone, that's going to help you kind of discern, what's going to be my best chance.
Fantastic. Okay, Chris, just a couple of, just before we move on to chlorophyll, which is really important, and just while we're talking currents and temps, Ben Whitelaw, with Tuna off Victoria, how much of a temperature change are you looking for? Are you looking for a big change of 1 to 2 degrees, or we're talking point degrees? And is there an ideal temp for billfish in your experience?
So I'll say that we've caught fish on a 1 to 1.5 degree temp change. So it can be that subtle, and that's why that customized tool is so important, is because it will help you identify gradual changes. And it's worth knowing that those changes are out there, and you can have 1, 2, 3, 4 different types of zones in mind. RipCharts lets you save these maps to your phone, so when you go offshore, you can hit your first break, and it didn't look very good. Let's go try the next one. So it's good to have a couple options available, but I would say do not pass up on a 1 or 2 degree change.
Cool.
And so Pete just mentioned 1 to 2 degree Fahrenheit is typically what I'm referring to, but 1 to 2 degrees Celsius as well would be a good change. As far as, kind of ideal temperature and color, your different species are going to have different criteria that they're interested in. Blue marlin, you want to hunt in blue water. Last year, the Garmin Billfish tournament, there was a big storm kicked in. It flushed a lot of dirty water inshore. And if you wanted to hunt blue marlin, you had to run to blue water. And that's just how it is. Now, people had the information, they had the charts, they knew blue water was a long way. They could make a decision. Do I want to run after it, or do I want to stay inshore or stay on the shelf and maybe go after stripes? And I can maybe my catch count could go up. And so people made that decision knowing there's not blue water, there's not blue marlin, but I could target a different species perhaps and take a different strategy on the tournament. Additionally, blue marlin are going to want 24 degrees Celsius. I mean, you can maybe get them a little colder, but that's just the way they're wired up.
Yeah, we're certainly seeing them come further south now, and just talking to Justin Murphy, can you see the water temp warming over the years in New South Wales and Victoria, pushing marlin further south? Look, we've heard of marlin being caught off, Gippsland region, which, as that big East Australian current comes down and brings that warmer water down, I think that what we're also seeing is more game fishermen fishing in areas for fish that they hadn't commonly done before. Everyone thinks, oh wow, these big bluefin tuna are here in Victoria. They've probably been here for years and years and years, but just people haven't been fishing for them because there hasn't been the social media awareness to go out there and give it a crack, where really known fishermen have known it for many, many years.
That's absolutely right. And also say that just with RipCharts, people will now have the confidence knowing what the water is, what the water does, what it can provide. It's worth running a little further out there because they've got some success. They see the data. Additionally, we're now, our seasons are no longer defined by the calendar. If you see a warm water eddy rolling in, there's a good chance that you're going to catch a marlin, and it's happened. We've seen warm water push in, comes across the shelf, customers went out and caught marlin, and out of season. So it's outside the typical season. So we're definitely learning more, and we're trying things that we know, and it's working. So
okay, so let's talk about chlorophyll, because this is one that's really interesting to me. Game fishermen have said chlorophyll is just so important. Can you talk us through it?
Yeah, so chlorophyll is the measurement of water color. And I'll say here in the Gulf of Mexico, for us, we look at water color before we look at sea temperature. I mean, we want to fish blue water. Now, you don't always maybe have blue water available, or some fish you can catch in green water. And obviously, at the moment, New South Wales has got a lot of green water, and obviously we're catching tuna in there. But what I will say is, you will see little filaments and little remnants of bluer water pushing in, and I'm hearing reports that people said, yeah, we were fishing the bluer water and we were catching our fish. And so when you see these little differences and gradients in watercolor, a lot of times they will be indicating some characteristics of the water that you may want to target. So it's good to know, and in fact, I would run towards the bluest water you could most of the time.
Yeah, we found that on local tuna over summer, the Christmas period gone, that the school tuna were much more productive in the blue water and in the edges of where the water became quite a lot cleaner. So that's where the white bait was sort of hanging around, and the small school tuna, we're talking sort of 8 to 25 kilos, were absolutely belly full to the brim with these tiny little white bait in that blue water. And sometimes we had to drive from, say, Port Phillip Bay heads, past, Apollo Bay, almost to Apollo Bay. So it was a decent old run.
Yeah. And this is just another example of a chlorophyll chart. You can see, we've got kind of some green water inshore, and then you got a kind of a solid ribbon of blue water, and then you've got an eddy that is kind of kicking back up north and going kind of counterclockwise, and you can see kind of remnants of the watercolor that it's streamed up with there. So those types of features and anomalies are important to pay attention to. The edges of that green and blue water could be moving bait along with it. And as Peter said before, this stuff changes every day, especially off the East Coast. You've got the strongest current in the world. It does change. It changes very fast. And so tracking this water, paying attention to where bites are, looking at what that water looked like at the time, and then tracking it forward as that water moves is going to be one of the keys to success. I mean, tracking that water, knowing that there's fish in there, and identifying the characteristics of the water that are producing.
Yep. Now, here's an interesting one that I'm going to throw at you, Chris. Robert makes a comment that in his experience fishing the East Coast for tuna this year, many have been caught in the Downwellings and quite a way away from the 0 line, more near the 10 line. Any commentary to that? Is that an anomaly that you can count for a reason, or is that just bait holding, or?
I would be curious if those lines were really tight and stacked. Let's say if your 10 line was relatively close to a 0 line, if you had really tight altimetry, I could see how fish would be existing on bait that's probably in that presence. I think over time, if you had that downwelling that continued to spin and you did not have nutrients refreshing up, that zone would probably diminish. But, if there's a remnant of bait, I mean, the fish are where the bait are, and they're not going to that bait's not going to disappear instantaneously. And so I would gather that I suspect that there was some bait that was present near a 0 line or near an upwelling. It may have drifted out or with currents and whatnot, and fish have stayed with it. But over time, I would expect that to diminish.
Sure. Also, Ben Whitelaw said, we've had an outstanding summer tuna run off Vic early this year. Was that an unusual change in water temperature or other factors, or should I expect this every year? That's an interesting one, and Ben probably helping Chris here answer, because obviously he's based out of Texas. I've been doing some conversations behind the scenes with Dr. Sean Tracy, and you might have seen or might have missed our show with Richard Abella a few shows ago, where we specifically talked to the local tuna, that there's a big belief that they've always been here, and there's just more and more social media and more people fishing it. However, there has been a number of those school tuna sat tagged to understand what their rebound rate is, and certainly if you follow Tuna Champions on Facebook, Sean has put up a few of the sat tagging results already to show that some of these tuna in only the space of 8 weeks go from basically Melbourne, Port Phillip Bay heads down to the tip of Tasmania and then back in close again to feed, all within a 6 to 8 week period over that time. And whether it's temperature change, a change in migration, we're still sort of trying to work out, because we've all of a sudden had an abundance of fishermen fishing them and catching them, where there has always been people catching them. It's just now becoming more and more socially understood. So watch this space, and we're hoping to bring Sean onto a show. He was busy compiling his East Coast and South End tuna report, which is available to download through the fisheries website, which talks about tuna and the fishing of SBTs across from Adelaide into Victoria and up the East Coast. Highly recommend that you follow Tuna Champions, because the stock is recovering. It's recovering very well, and most importantly, we need to educate more people about this tuna stock and how to look after it, how to prepare it properly as well. So sorry, Chris, I'm taking your limelight there, but let's keep moving into RipCharts. But Ben, great question, and watch this space for more info from Just Your Average Fishers.
Sure. So next, I'd like to show folks a little bit of the mobile app. I'd say the mobile app technology is probably one of our strongest features And in particular, I'm going to go over a couple of the nice tool sets here. So if I could get the apps up, I can give a little demo here. So here we have on the right is the mobile app. And I want to show the custom temp tool, which I mentioned earlier. So we've got some New South Wales data here real quick. I'm just going to pick one of the first ones. We'll jump right in. So there has been some cloud cover, and unfortunately clouds are a reality that we can't change, although we do try to mitigate it with as many shots a day that we can get. We will build composites where we take fragments of good data, and we have some cloud-free products as well. So we wish, of all the things we could change, we wish we could change the clouds, but at the moment we're just trying to build as much as we can to help mitigate it. So here we have a temp, and I'm going to zoom in to kind of this area in here. And I know, because I have a trained eye, we've got a couple of discrete breaks here, and I want to show you with the customization tool how we can highlight these. And so I've zoomed into my area. I'm going to click the tools button. I'm going to click the adjust temp button. And in the warm zone here, we're about 20.5. So I'm going to drop the top bar down to 21.
Is that Fahrenheit, Chris, or that's Celsius?
That's Celsius here.
Yep.
And now in our cold zone, we've got 17.5. So I'm going to drag up the cold barrier to 17. And what you can see here is a variety of temperature changes. Obviously, we have very aggressive temperature changes in here. That's 18.9 to 17.5, and that's a degree, almost a degree and a half. The question earlier was, are those significant changes? Absolutely, that's a good change right there. You've got another good temp change here. That's 18.8 on the cold side, 19.8 on the warm side, so that's another degree change. And then you actually have a secondary break here between 19.9 and 20.6. So you've got several 1 degree breaks here. And if you hadn't customized this chart, you may not be aware that they were there. And so just looking at this alone, if this was kind of within my range, you've got literally 1, 2, 3 temperature breaks there that are candidates. And if you were to download this map to your mobile phone and take it offshore, you could make a decision on the fly of each break, and knowing, well, that first break looked good, looked decent, didn't look good. Let's try the next one. Let's stay here. And you're able to make a decision while on the water based upon what you're seeing when you take this with you.
How far apart are those breaks there, Chris?
So we have a measurement tool. I'm gonna go down here to the bottom, and I got distance tool there. And so just kind of the distance between those two. So that's 7 nautical miles. This next one is about 3 nautical miles.
Okay.
There. In this particular example, that's the way those look. So another thing that I like to do when analyzing water is, we know temperature here. Does this correlate with blue water? Now, I know just from looking earlier in the week, we've got a lot of green water out here, but there may be some remnants of blue water here. And that's important to know, because while you may be targeting a temperature change, you may want to know also, is there blue water available? So we have what we call an overlay tool down here at the bottom, and I'll show you how we can overlay a chlorophyll on this temp, and you can toggle back and forth and zoom, etc. So this is a very powerful analysis tool.
So while you're loading up that, Chris, a question, and I can't recall who it was from before. Is there any opportunity for a development piece that you can sync in RipCharts into the new technology of the sounders and chart plotters of various brands, so that we can overlay some of this stuff on now live in our boat on our various chart plotters and sounders and so forth?
So that's a topic that we're always interested in discussing with the different manufacturers. The lack of our availability on these chart plotters is not on our side. It's more of we need to have further discussions with them to get it into their side. There are a lot of moving parts to RipCharts. As I said, we download terabytes of data every month. We've got data streaming in every minute. Getting that coordinated on chart plotter and whatnot would take some time and effort that we would welcome those conversations with them. Until then, the mobile app is fully functional. You can take it offshore and people are catching fish. And so those discussions we hope will evolve. But for right now, this is a very viable candidate. So
Sure, absolutely.
So just looking real quick, I overlaid this chlorophyll chart, and we can see there's a few areas of bluer water. I'm going to toggle back to my sea temp, and let's see if and where these may coincide with temperature breaks. And so I'm going to click the hide button up here on the top right, and I'm going to flip back to my sea temp. So we did have a little bit of blue water up here. Let me go back. It's right here. And I may have gotten that a little bit too hot. Let me adjust this just a touch. And I'm going to go back to my overlay. So there's my blue water right there. So it's kind of residing in there. Blue water and sea temp doesn't really appear to exactly correlate, but that being said, you do know you have warm water and blue water in this area. Sometimes they will correlate exactly, sometimes they don't. So that's just additional knowledge we can take with us. Let me adjust this back. So you can definitely fidget and fiddle with these settings and really interrogate different areas to kind of find what you're looking for. And you can kind of see here, this water right here, that's a little eddy of warm water, and it is got some remnants of blue water associated with it. So when that eddy kind of spun in, it spun in with some blue water. It may be dissipating now. I'm curious if it maybe a few days ago or a week ago, it may have been stronger. I wasn't paying attention in particular. So that's two of our very powerful tools there. One is the customized sea temp. One is the overlay tool. Another tool that we've just introduced is Phishing Reports. And as I said earlier, you can pay attention to social media and docked reports and always kind of listen to maybe where a fish was caught. People may not tell you exactly. They may say, we caught it in 1,000 fathoms out of such and such port. That's not bad information. You can go look at that on the chart. Now we are crowdsourcing information from RipCharts members if they're willing to contribute. And we're now showing reports from customers on the chart. This is very helpful, especially with, if a customer is willing to share their report, as Peter said, a day or two later, that water's moved. But what you can do, you can go look at that report at that particular day, look at the water there, and then know that water did have fish in it. Let me continue to track that water in the subsequent days on RipCharts. And so some of these reports are kind of older. I've added them a while back. But if you turn on your reports, we also have regular waypoints that you can view. Let me close this here. And whatnot. So anyways, lots of new features to aggregate data and display it there on the map, so you can kind of quickly discern just what's taking place offshore.
Fantastic. Look, there's so much information there, Chris. So I suppose really in a nutshell, and just summarising what you've been through there, is that obviously look at the sea surface temps, which will give you an ideal temp range for billfish fishing. But to find those eddies within the tide and those temperature breaks and so forth, utilising those other charts and customising them to really hone out that you might actually find a 3-mile break in quite a large area. So that was absolutely fantastic, very, very informative. And obviously all of these videos and tuitional videos on RipCharts available on your website.
Website and on the mobile app. We've got a whole video gallery on the mobile app that you can download the app and view the videos without ever subscribing as well. So you can get familiar with that before fully signing up. Okay, so a couple of good questions coming through for you, Chris.
Now, Paul Borg, would the charts help with deep dropping for such as blue eye? So this is very, very deep water, extremely cold at the bottom. We're talking 500 metres plus. So, 1,1500 feet of depth in the old scale for you. What's your thoughts on that?
While the primary objective is going to be tracking pelagics that are moving with the water, we do have some bathymetry charts. And so if you need to look at, canyons and rocks and ridges and things like that, we do kind of have a base map that could be used in that regard.
Probably also use it for the lack of current, so the drift speed isn't too fast.
I'm sorry, say it again.
To find the lack of current for deep dropping, so the drift speed isn't too.
Oh, true. That's true. If you don't want high current where you're deep dropping, that's true. You could also review the currents.
Yep. Fantastic. I suppose in a nutshell, if I'm a new user, would you just recommend just starting at A and jumping through all of the tuition, or do you have any sort of recommendations for what the first new user of your program should do, Chris, to get themselves acquainted or to set it up correctly?
Yeah, so the learning curve can be a little steep if you're just brand new to fishing, brand new to looking at data. My first recommendation is spend 15, 20 minutes watching the tutorials. You can gather the right perspective. You can learn attributes of what to look for almost instantaneously. We want to try and shortcut that learning curve as fast as possible. Next thing I do is just start looking at some data, review the tutorial, understand the principles and the lessons that are being illustrated there, and then go try to recreate it. Go look for a temperature break, go look for an upwelling. Then start listening to reports. When you hear a fish being caught, if you hear a fish not being caught, if you hear it was dead out there, if you hear there was life out there, take that information and go look at a chart. That's kind of what we call, learning in the rearview mirror. Let's learn from others. Let's look at the data. Let's associate additional reports with it to try and learn as much as we can.
Yeah, sure. And look, we're finding that our fishery is evolving so much, not only locally in our marlin fishery, but particularly our southern bluefin fishery down here in Victoria, but so is a deep dropping daytime for broadbill swordfish. And we've got to do a long stretch to the canyons, at least sort of 85, 90 kilometres off the Gippsland coast out to past the oil rigs to a well-known canyon system called Bass Canyon or Everard Canyon. I couldn't more highly recommend your program for sort of talking about those current speeds and bits and pieces to make sure that you can drop and drift as best as you can, because when you're going out that wide, you don't have any make safe, and we're talking guys leaving in 5.5 metre boats for 220 kilometre round trips.
Yeah, absolutely. That's similar to us. Before you make a commitment to run that far, one, you got to make sure conditions are safe, and two, you want to ensure that they're favorable. So reviewing the data beforehand is definitely important.
Yeah, fantastic. All right. Well, look, we're going to get Ben, our producer behind the scenes. There's so many more questions. I just had a quick look on Facebook as you were explaining a few things, And apologies to everyone if we can't get to them. So we're going to come back to the panel now. So Pete will join us, and Ben's going to start throwing us some questions. And just while he's teeing up, I suppose, Pete, in some of our pre-discussions, you recanted how that you've had some success a number of years in a row down at the Portland bluefin tuna competition by telling some anglers what lures to go for, but then where to actually fish. And you were sort of off screen as I sort of recanted your comment the other day, talking about finding the optimum area. You know, fish might only be in 20% of that area. So, you know, you've got a better chance of, you know, rather than zigzagging through an area that might have 100% no fish. Can you talk to us about how you found RipCharts so important to the tuna fishery, particularly when you fished out of Portland, because you've won that comp a number of years in a row?
No, the lures have, and I haven't fished where I've wanted to. I've always fished where the skippers wanted to, because they're local guys and they know the area. But certainly, what I have done is looked at the fishery, looked at where they're catching the fish or not catching the fish, and you know, certainly people go off to what's that bay called? Bridgeport?
Bridgewater, yep.
Bridgewater. And they've sort of said, oh, you know, we went down there for the week and we didn't catch anything. And then I pull up the RipCharts and go, Jesus, if only that had RipCharts, they could have gone to the shelf and they would have got heaps, because there was a great eddy there and a great break. And, you know, basically, these are highly mobile fish. They do, you know, stack up at Bridgewater. They do stack up behind the rock. They stack up in a bunch of places in Apollo Bay and that sort of stuff. But when the current changes, they move, and they move really quick. Like you said, you know, they get all the way down to Tasmania and back in, 8 weeks? And it's probably done 2 trips of that, you know, in a short time. So RipCharts just helps you really sort of lock into it really well. You know, as for picking the lures, well, that's what I do because that's my job, and I know them pretty bloody well. And it's a bit of a party trick. You can sort of work out a pattern and move the lures around so you get the fish where you want it to. And but, you know, certainly RipCharts in all the areas, you know, it's incredibly important. You know, being the lure maker, times are good, times are bad. I've owned boats for short times because I buy them and can't afford to keep them. So, you know, the petrol money's viable. In fact, in the old days, I used to download my own charts. I had a satellite aerial and downloaded my own charts and analysed them, and, you know, didn't get much information. But I knew when to go and when not to go, not to waste my money on fuel. And, you know, my success rate was very high because I went there when conditions were perfect. And there was a great temperature break within range, you know, and the chlorophyll was dead right. We didn't have altimetry in those days. You know, this is going back 25 years ago. But, you know, charts are so important, especially when you're on a budget and times are hard and, you know, you're looking at the weather reports. If the weather's good, you look at the chart and you go, it's not really right. I'd have to go too far out. I'll just wait. You know, so when I spend my $1,000 on the weekend, it's going to be worth it. I've got a good chance of catching fish. The other thing too is that in Australia, the currents do move quickly. It's very rare to sort of get a pinpoint on a chart and go there and exactly what was on the chart is what you see. But it does give you a much smaller area to work, and you just keep tracking. And what I actually do is when I'm going fishing and things look good, I watch the chart for a couple of days before and I see which way the water's going. So if I can't find it, I know, for example, if the hot water's, say, 24 degrees and it's pushing down 22 degrees and it's tailing off to 23 behind the 24. So I know when I go out there, I come in 23 degrees, I should go that way because that's where the 24-degree water is. So it gives me a lot of information. And, you know, I can make the best or worst lures in the world. It doesn't make any difference if you're not going where the fish are. You know, it's basically finding the fish, getting the experience and catching them. And especially for the novices, you know, getting the best chance of getting that experience and hooking up, it's just the most important thing. You know, in fact, you know, it's more important than the lures you choose.
Okay, so question for you, Peter. So we'll now sort of do these quick fire questions for the next 10 minutes or so to try and get through a few. Question for Peter. Here we go. Bo, all right, where do you see lure manufacturing going into the future? 3D printed heads, printed skirts, what's next? You know, can you give us some insight to what you might be future developing? I think, I don't know, Bo, he might just be getting over the fact that he's just released fish printed skirts, but what are your thoughts?
It's a very relevant question. Basically, I'm still working out of my notebooks that I did 25 years ago. Last year, I sort of got involved with the University of Queensland the local university here, and I'm actually working with the designers and the 3D printers actually with $1.5 to $2 million machines, basically pushing all that technology forward. It's not going to be released for 10 years. We'll come up with shiny little things. I put some on Facebook about a year ago. But that's where the technology is going. It's basically getting to a tool that is totally functional. Forget about all the fancy trims and, catching fishermen and stuff. I think, there's enough fishermen out there that want a tool that works better, regardless of what it looks like. It doesn't, the pretty lures with the nice shell and the pretty foils that we do and the lovely logos and stuff will always sell. But, even now already there's a core bunch of fishermen that have accepted the fish print range with the plain white heads and 3D printed. And especially the Americans jump on it straight away. And then generally Australia follows 5 years later, and then a couple of other countries a few years after that. Brad J, we started that actually 7 years ago, and Australia's only jumped on it in the last 2 years. And that's a pretty normal time frame. And I think the technology of lures will increase. I think, what I've done in my period, with the restrictions of being in a lure business, you don't make a whole lot of money to chuck at research. For example, these fish prints have actually cost around about $100,000 during a bloody pandemic. Will we make a profit out? Will we stay in business? I've got no idea. We have to sell a hell of a lot of them for that to happen. But there's always continuing development. There's always, in every industry, guys who stick to what they're used to, even though it's 20 years old. It's still available and they still use it. But there is enough customers out there to really drive the development really well. And, on a bunch of websites, there's a bunch of lure maker websites, and some of the stuff they're doing is remarkable, and it's really good to see. A lot of the guys are still sitting back there thinking it's a massive business and they're, going to jump in the lure business and become a professional. I was doing it part-time for 15 years before I did it full-time. And that was in a period with a lot less competition. I'm very fortunate I started when I did. And I'm very fortunate, that I've had guys like our mate Lofty, who supported me for 30 odd years, without question, and that's just remarkable. We've got a number of customers like that, without whom we would not be full-time lure makers. We'd be sort of knocking them up on weekends and never getting paid what they're worth. So I think the future's there. I think the relationships in business are still there with the right people who do support you. And you've certainly got to earn that support both ways. I have to earn Lofty's support and Lofty had to earn mine. It's a mutual thing. And I think business is very much about relationships, which a lot of the people don't realise. It's all still based on where the product's made or all that sort of stuff. And, most of the stuff, there's no skirts made in Australia. There's no resins made in Australia. There's no foils made in Australia. So, that we rely heavily on importing goods. And the thing is that game fishing is a worldwide sport. And, we basically need worldwide markets. Australia's about 25% of what we sell. America's another 25%. The rest of the world is basically another 50%. So you need those markets because, COVID now is killing the Australian market. There's no question. There's not going to be a lot of sales now. But, America's still firing. The islands are still firing, and so Pacific Islands are still ordering. So, if you've been in it long enough, you've got a wide spread to keep you in business. But the development, yes, it's there and it's happening and you can see it. Will it be 3D printing? Probably not. It's quite slow. It does allow you to do things that you can't do any other way. But, the printing that we're doing now with the university is actually laser printing and UV printing, which is slightly different, and printing in titanium and stainless steel. It's very exciting. But the machines are $1.5 million, so it's not going to be a common thing, but it will give the direction of the future, and other guys are doing it too. And yeah, I think the future's great.
Good. Now to both Chris and Pete, and I'll start off with you, Chris. Any standout stories or catches or tournament wins where RipCharts has been a defining feature?
Yeah, there's oftentimes, I'd say most recently, west coast of Australia, Hayley Deller just set the women's Marlin record in proclaiming RipCharts. We had just come to Exmouth and they had been reviewing the data, herself and Eddie. I mean, White Marlin Open last year. Our customer won it with RipCharts. We're in every tournament just about on the leaderboard in some capacity.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yourself, Pete?
What?
The RipCharts, were any defining capture that RipCharts has made a difference to finding that fish?
Oh, absolutely. You know, basically on the Gold Coast, I use it a lot. And I think the last 3 times, I don't fish much anymore. Basically, I go flats fishing for bonefish. You'll like this too. I was in Atataki, and we actually got the charts for the area. And the guy took me to one side of the island. I said, no, there'll be more fish on the other side of the island in another boom because the water's warm and the fish will be up the flats. And I was right. So that was exciting, telling a guide where to catch fish in a place he's been fishing for 30 years. But yeah, look, RipCharts is a major part of the fishery on the Gold Coast. I think, you know, he's got a very high profile here. He supported the local clubs. In fact, Chris has supported most of the local clubs on the East Coast and done incredibly well out of it. And certainly, you know, most of the tournament winners have been using RipCharts as well. It's just part of your quiver that, you know, once you're experienced, you really want every edge you can get in a tournament. You know, and the Americans go to absurd lengths, like the amount of teasers they buy and the distances they go for the tournaments they're fishing. You know, they're certainly doing a lot more than Australians are. But for a beginner, I can't think of any better thing for somebody to do than use RipCharts to go and find where the fish are likely to be and spend your money wisely on when you go and when you use your fuel and where you go. Absolutely.
Now, Pete, question for you on outriggers on a trailer boat. You obviously support the notion of making sure that trailer boats have outriggers. Mounting location more important, say if you had a hard top, do you put them on the hard top or on the side of the boat, or is it the height that you can get them to? And do you have a preferred height that you'd say is a minimum length for an outrigger?
Okay, basically the statistics are, and it's interesting that Bart Miller years ago wrote an article saying exactly the same thing, which is probably where I got it from, is that the length of the outriggers should be the length of the boat. And you put them up on the top, you basically set them at 45 degrees so that you've got maximum width and maximum height between the boat, and you rake them back about 5 degrees. You don't have them straight out the side of the boat, you rake them back slightly. Now, on my boats, my outriggers have been much longer because I actually want the tips of the outrigger level with the stern or slightly behind the stern. So when I turn, I can turn pretty much at 90 degrees and do a full circle almost in the length of the boat without tangling the lines. It does give you a major advantage in an awful lot of ways.
Okay.
But, you know, for the boats, please get carbon fibre outriggers and decent bases. Don't get the sloppy little telescopic fiberglass ones. They're next to useless. They've got to be stiff to aid in setting the hooks.
Okay. Now, Brock Eli, a fantastic follower of the page. This is one that you could probably really speak to, and this is probably more the nature of the purchaser rather than the fisher. But regarding lures each season, there seems to be standout lures that catch a lot of fish consistently each season. This year, I've seen a lot on the Samaki redbait diver or redbaited like Brad J coloured skirts. You know, years before that, Pakula Evil Angel dominated quite a bit. Why do you think this is the case, that some years some colours perform better than others?
It's actually part of the social system that we've got. Basically, in social media and the reports, guys come into the fishing, they're very exciting about catching fish, and they report the lures and all that sort of stuff. By the third year, they don't need to report their fish. They're satisfied just catching them and stuff, so they don't report. So basically, you're getting reports from new guys who are buying the latest lures, and a lot of that information is not actually true. There's still lots of fish getting caught on Lumo, still lots getting caught on Evil and stuff. You just don't hear the reports. I get the reports, but they're not on social media. You know, if you notice on social media and a lot of the forums, guys will put up the reports. If they put up too many, they start getting flack from other people saying you're a show off and all that sort of stuff. Yep. The old colours still work. The new colours are certainly, you know, we developed the colours and the additives and stuff, but now those additives that we put in Brad J, they're in pretty much all the skirts. So, you know, there's no real advantage to just using Brad J.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
Certainly does. Look, I couldn't agree with you more, Pete, and certainly I think through the advent of social media, more people are becoming more aware of what people's catching. It doesn't necessarily mean that the overall number of fishes up in terms of being caught. And I still know a number of well-known fishers that wouldn't be known. They're well known to me, but they're not well known in social media circles because they don't have social media, that go out there and brain fish and brain them in very big rates and very big sizes, who will never talk to anyone, and as best as you'll ever see is maybe them dragging it out of the boat at the boat ramp. And they're changing up what they're doing as well, because every fishing season can be different. And I think that's
why it's so important, that you're on the ball, Lofty's on the ball, you got that information. You won't say where it came from. We got tournament wins where, and it's actually quite annoying because it's detrimental to the business. They win the biggest tournament in the world on our lures and say, "Oh, I need another 5. Please don't tell anyone we won the tournament." And once somebody tells you that, you can't tell people. And that happens a lot. But when I give information out, it's based on the reports I get, which aren't the reports that other people get, as you with your mates. I see what we're selling to who and where, and something's going on.
Well, I think that, we've obviously got a lot of big game fishermen in Complete Angler Ringwood. It's probably one of the biggest game stores in the Melbourne metro area, if not the biggest. There's obviously a number of tackle worlds as well, with Paul Worsling, who, runs a good show as well. We're all credit is due. But to give people an understanding, and this is not just putting wind into Pete's sails for everyone out there, by the time that we had sold our first order, which was a considerable order, and we got first release on it, no doubt, we had already reordered with Bakula 3 subsequent times leading up to when the last lure from the first order was sold in fish print. So we've had 3 or 4 restockings, even during the tail off and tail into COVID times. And a lot of that has come from die-hard game fishers that are very, very good game catchers, but are not on social media circles. So, and that speaks to the testament of itself of trying up new things to catch fish, and already fish have been caught on those lures locally, and Portland and Port Fairy as well.
Yeah, but also, in saying that, the information that you get on social media is still relevant. A lot of the times it's not accurate at all, but the guys in the know, this is my business, this is my career, this is my passion. I do have a lot of people who give me reports, and, being honest to them, if they say don't tell anyone who's catching it, but, this is what we're catching them on, then we do pass that on to the consumers if they ask. And, it's quite frustrating getting orders from people who are beginning and they don't ask. You're there to be questioned, and I'm here to be questioned. I've got Skype, I've got online message banks and stuff. I don't care where you buy the lures. But, certainly some shops are better at portraying the relevant information because they've got the background information from the professionals and the guys who are good going out there who aren't on social media.
Fantastic.
And a lot of the social media stuff, some of it's not actually accurate, but there's enough of it that is, that you get a general ballpark of what's going on.
Okay, so final question for the evening, and it's to both Pete and Chris. Adoption of barbless hooks in billfish fishing. What are your thoughts, Pete? Is it something that's slow to take up, or will become more paramount in making sure that we're releasing fish in the best possible condition? And Chris, has there been much adoption of barbless hooks in tournament fishing over in the US at all?
Just from my side, I've not heard a lot about it. I do think that's a little more of the art of fishing, and definitely I'm sure people here are not opposed to that, but it's not been a real hot topic necessarily, at least not in the circles that I'm in. Okay,
Pete, yourself?
There's this American guy who comes out and fishes with Rob Smith out of the Sunshine Coast. His name's Harry Martin, I think. I might be wrong. I can't really remember. It's a couple of years ago. Does that ring a bell with you, Chris? A guy called Harry Martin or anybody like that?
I don't recognize it.
Okay, he uses barbless hooks, and he doesn't lose any fish because he uses barbless hooks. The thing about lures is you don't really need barbless hooks. We do cut barbs down for penetration and stuff. Certainly a barbless hook penetrates a lot better. The fish jumping can shake them out, but they don't seem to. I use micro barbs on my lures, and I don't really have a problem. The other thing with lures is you're not the fish aren't swallowing them. They're getting caught in the jaw. So when you're releasing them, it's just as easy. You're not doing any more damage with or without a barbless hook. And if you're not catching them in the jaw, then they're getting gut hooked. And whether it's barbless or barb, it's going to do a lot of damage. Okay.
Fantastic.
So I guess it's really not that important when it comes to skirted trolling lures. But if people, some small group bandied about and say, you've got to have barbless hooks for catching marlin on lures, I don't think it's that big a deal. I don't think you're going to lose that many fish because of it. Certainly my experiences with guys who do use barbless hooks in lures and back, their success rate's pretty good.
Yep, fantastic. All right, now we're going to wrap up the show, and this is one of the most important parts, is where we reward our viewers for asking wonderful questions, and our producer behind the scenes, who is a very experienced fisho, judges those, and we give away these prize packs. And I suppose we'll just go through it now. And Ben, I did cut you off at the start for showing what the prize packs were, so I don't know if you want to upload them or not, and we'll roll through them. But the first prize, just recounting, is a brilliant full fish printed skirt red bait pack with the 3D heads from Bakula. There they are on screen, with a 3D with the printed fish strip teaser, which is absolutely fantastic. That is the first prize. And well done, Bo Eli. What a brilliant question you asked before. Certainly, if you contact me by the page, we will get that out to you, and fingers crossed, as soon as COVID ends, you can put some fish onto that and report back to Peter and myself of the success that you've fished with those lures. So, and thank you very kindly for Pete for supporting Just Your Average Fishers and allowing to give away such a fantastic prize. Second prize is a year-long RipCharts membership, and it's a very valuable membership, so thank you so much, Chris, for supporting Just Your Average Fishers and coming on board. And that goes to Mark Farrell. Mark, well done. Thank you for asking your question. Again, message me by the Just Your Average Fishers page, and we'll send across your email to Chris, and he'll set that up and send you an introduction email to get that done. So thank you very kindly, Chris, for supporting us. Obviously, we've spoken about Ian Loft and Complete Angular Ringwood a bit this evening, and he sort of structured this daisy chain and brought them in. I can remember when they were in the shop, and we sold them out like crazy, and to the beginners, they were a really good addition to the product range. And I think, Pete, you've got a lot of them on your site now as well. That goes to Nick Davian. But we don't have a photo of that one. It's around here somewhere. Here it is. Look, I've got one in Black Betty, which is absolutely fantastic, ready to go. So, Nick, if you just give me a buzz by the Just Your Average Fishers page, we'll get that out to you. And then the SFT lure packs. Very thankful to Steve Lewis, who's a long-time supporter of our page from SFT Australia. Does these wonderful bib lures from SFT Fishing Tackles, something different to throw at some fish. The SFT pack number 1, so a couple of Takumi 125s, goes to Paul Richards, and the second pack goes to Paul Borg. So a fantastic array of prizes. So thank you very, very much, SFT, for that, and Paul for your questions. So Paul Richards and Paul Borg. Alrighty, so we've had a big show. You've all stayed with us for a very long time. You've asked a number of questions. I will personally now go through all of those questions and fill in any gaps where I can. Pete and Chris, I don't know, Chris, you're probably feeling pretty tired. You had to get up very, very early over in USA to come and support us this evening. And Pete, you've probably got a massive day of manufacturing more heads and getting the lures out to shops tomorrow. So thank you very much for your support. And I don't know if you had anything that you'd wanted to impart on our viewership before you go at all, Chris and Pete.
I'd just like to thank you for having us. It's a pleasure to be with you, and thank you very much.
Pleasure is all ours. And Chris, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Very, very informative. I can't wait to load up RipCharts tomorrow and have a really good look through it and start planning out submissions post this COVID rubbish.
Yeah, no, thanks again also to yourself, and Pete, always great to share the screen with you. So thanks again, guys. We enjoyed it.
No worries. And thanks to Ben, Complete Angular Ringwood, Pakula Lures, RipCharts and SFT. Thank you very much to all of our wonderful viewers. Do we have another Just Your Average Fisho show coming up for you? Yes, we do. Hold on tight. The details will be out very, very shortly. So thank you again. Good evening. Stay safe. Keep fishing.